Alex here with a video on the problem of money. This video is the second of a three-part series. The first one I already did. That is the problem of media, and the one that's coming up next is going to be the big one, which is the problem of voting. This video, so I took a lot of notes on all three of these topics, and this video had the list of notes that was the shortest. I almost thought about mixing it in with the other two, but instead what I'm going to do is just publish both today. So you guys don't have to wait for the problem of voting to publish. It'll come out right after. And I feel like just by itself, this video might like not make a whole lot of sense in like, well, what's the point? Why did he do that one? I feel like it glues the other two videos together. So it is important as part of the three-part series, just maybe not, by itself. Um, just like with the first video, my disclaimer is that these are just my observations. Just because these are my observations doesn't mean that I like it. Doesn't mean that I approve of it, that I support it. A lot of people will sometimes think if Alex has, said that this is the way something is, that also means that he likes it, which is not the case. The other thing is, I think one of my viewers pointed out that there's no perfect system and every system has flaws. And of course, I want to confirm that that's exactly what I think as well. That just because these are my observations and I'm pointing out flaws doesn't mean that I think that this is a bad system and has to be replaced. I guess towards the end of the video, I'll talk about some of my concerns about how I feel money has problems that impact society in a very negative way. But at the same time, why I think it's the best system and what I guess the government could do, going forward. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. So let's just get started. The first conclusion that I came to, I guess, at this point in my life is that, as far as I can tell, money is a very necessary thing because there are all of these things that need to be done out in society, whether it's cutting people's hair, like building them homes, businesses, feeding people, moving water around so people have potable water. All that stuff is important, but not very exciting or fun from a work standpoint. And I guess society's found this way to make people do things that they're not very interested or excited in doing if they are given these coupons in exchange for doing that work that they can now go ahead and spend to get things that they want or need or are excited to have. That's a tricky distinction there because there are some people who are getting so little money that they aren't really having a great life with that money that they're getting. They're pretty much just surviving, getting a place to stay, paying rent, food, water, etc., and that's all they can afford. But for the most part, or at least in the old days, I don't know about now with the gap between the rich and the poor expanding. I guess let's say for some part, there are people who do spend their money on fun things like, I don't know, their hobbies. Maybe they're skiers or they like swimming or sports or going to the movies, stuff like that. People are basically going to a job that they really wouldn't go to if they didn't get paid for it. That's most people. No matter how much you like your job, if you wouldn't get paid for it, you probably wouldn't do it. That's most people by a long shot. Probably we're up in the 99%. People go, they do these jobs that they would never do if they weren't getting paid. And then they go and use that money for things that they want. Sometimes it's a car, sometimes it's a really nice house. And like I mentioned earlier, sometimes they're just trying to survive. But the point is, I understand the point of money. Then we get into the other part, which is what I have also observed, which is that some people have enough only to really take care of themselves. In fact, most people, which I guess is fine. And then there's this other group, which is a lot smaller, that has what I call decision making power. That level of money, like they have enough for themselves, yeah, that's fine, but they have a surplus, and the surplus is used to allow them to make decisions that other people can't. And now we're talking about decisions that are supposed to be, at least what I would imagine, ideally for the betterment of society. And in a really basic sort of low level, I guess, somebody who has some extra money but not a whole lot, you could see that manifest as a restaurant that's opened or some other small business like a shop or something. But when you go higher up, you have people who can decide things like, I want to build a base on Mars, and they are not just going to have a fanciful idea. They're literally going to do that because they have that much money. And that's a thing that I guess, for better or for worse, is supposed to be the way that the system works, which is kind of a staggering realization if you think of it, is that the system that we use sort of automatically polices which people are allowed to decide to do big things. Pretty much any American can have, or any human on the planet can have an idea. But the system has decided whose ideas actually get to come to fruition and whose don't, based on who has this huge surplus of money. And so that's kind of what I have come to see as maybe the unfair part of all of it, that people can't really articulate. They know that it's unfair because some people have a lot and some people don't have any, but they don't know exactly why. And really, it just comes down to that there may be people who are able to make decisions that others can't. Probably, I don't know how many people are self-made, wealthy versus they just came into it, who have that. I don't want to say they use the word right, but in a sense, you do. If you have $10 million, you kind of do have the right to do something like, I think we need to build a super mall or something like that. And then if you go into the billions, you go into what I was talking about with, I think we need to go into space and build bases on Mars and stuff like that. So that's really what it comes down to. And that's one of the things that I started to realize when our Nevada judges started to grow a little bit. And I use the word little bit because I'm talking tiny. I mean, it's a tiny organization. I think the the Nevada Independent referred to our Nevada judges as diminutive, which I would say is very accurate. And if you've played D&D, you know that's the second size category up on the list. It's very, very small. But I came to that realization, basically figuring, because we do get revenue and I do spend it, is that it is in a sense decision making, I guess, authority that's been conferred upon me by, whether you look at it as the public or YouTube specifically or people's donations who are giving money, is that it turns into a second camera or an extra camera operator, stuff like that. So I talk about this a little bit in The Problem of Media, so I won't go back into that. But if you haven't seen The Problem of Media, please watch it, because it talks about how money is not just an optional thing for them, it's an existential thing. They either have it and survive, or they don't and they perish. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think it's a trade off. And this video, I guess, touches on the fact that it goes into much more than just media. Um, in the system, any system that uses money the way that we use it, there really isn't two paths, the right way and the wrong way. There is, to them, the people who are, in control of these institutions, businesses, etc., the path that allows them to survive, and then the path that will cause them to go bankrupt and collapse. And so a lot of times I would see people posting comments and stuff how somebody sold out, or somebody chose greed over doing the right thing. And I think that people don't realize that the system, the way that it was designed, it is just an illusion that they have a choice between right and wrong. They really don't. They have a choice between making money or not. And then the big problem is, if they don't, they perish. So these institutions and businesses really don't see it as option A, option B. They're just on track to do what they're supposed to do, which is to continue to generate profits. So here we are at the end of the video, and I was going to mention what I think which is something that I don't usually do, but I was going to mention what I think the system could do. And one of them is to confront the areas where there really isn't a profit motive, but society has a need. And I think that they do this relatively well. They do this, I think, through grants. So the government, whether it's the state or federal government, will recognize, society can benefit greatly from this particular thing, and it's lacking right now, and it doesn't look like the profit motive is going to drive that particular thing that is needed. And so a grant will issue, and that organization will survive on grant money and maybe some revenue or donations as well. But it's one of the ways to confront the flaws of the money system. I guess some people refer to it as capitalism. I haven't researched exactly 100% what that is, so I'm not going into that because I'm not fully cognizant of it, of what exactly it is. I'm sure there's a lot to capitalism. I'm just referring to what my observations are on the problems of money. So that's good. The other thing is the confrontation of greed, I think, has to be a lot more aggressive. I mean, I heard in the old days that punitive damages were much more dangerous to companies. And I mean, that's just probably one of the ways that they went about doing it. There's probably other ways. But of course, with any system, you look at the incentives and you can kind of take your hands off the wheel there because it's just going to drive itself in those directions. But then you also have to be aware of the exploitations. And that is what I think that the government does not even come close to doing. In fact, they're so egregiously incompetent at it that it's almost become nowadays like this vicious sort of rat race where there's this culture that it's just okay to step all over people. Like if they're weak or they're insignificant, there's nothing they can do. Too bad, so sad. And I see that now manifesting in Nevada with the rents skyrocketing. I don't know if other states are having that problem, but I'm sure that other people have noticed issues as well where they were treated poorly by an employer or a landlord or any other lenders, stuff like that. And sort of their perspective is, well, it's not our fault. This is the way that we're supposed to operate. If you have any issues, then figure it out yourself. For most people, they just take it and move on and suffer. Other people will sue and find out that the court system isn't really equipped to save them. And so that's what I think is the biggest weakness. And I think that institutions should, um, I guess, sort of self-police as part of that. But I think most of it would be the government stepping in and doing a better job at identifying these pain points as to where the profit motive actually leads to abuse of the population and confronting it much more aggressively than they do. I think that that's the best that I can do for this video, guys. I know that it's not as good as the problem of media, but you're about to get to see the problem of voting, which is really what I was hoping to get into today, and I will publish this today. Probably you'll see it pop up within 30 minutes. So think of this video as the glue between the two other videos. If you have any questions, feel free to post them down in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.